Everybody, or good afternoon, depending on which part of this country that you're in. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. I am the mostly regular host of the show that you're watching right now. It's Rebel Roundup. It's our daily news and opinion show. It is sometimes painfully live, and today I'm joined by my Thursday co-host, my friend, my colleague, my constant help at the company, Tamara Ugolini. Tamara, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks, Sheila. How are you doing over there?
Good. I can't believe it is the middle of August. I'm not
Right?
ready for the kids to go back to school. Mine go back to school like in 2 weeks. I know some parts of the country it's a little bit sooner. But it just feels like the summer has flown right by.
It really has. I look back to when I was younger and my parents would be like, "Oh, it seems like yesterday." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't feel that way." And then as time creeps on up on you, it gets more and more realistic. So definitely feeling that. Can't even believe we're like summer's pretty much over. And I'm looking back and I'm like, we need to cram some things in here because
Yeah.
we're losing time. And before we know it, we'll be hibernating in the cold, dead winter, which we'll get to in a minute, is
Yeah.
not great climate for electric vehicles.
Right. Or dogs and cats, apparently, according to the CBC.
Yeah.
They published an article today saying, that dog of yours, it's bad for the climate. I'm like,
Yes, of
Catherine Tate
course.
zooming around to Paris, the former head of this CBC. In the meantime, my Morgan the Wonder Dog, who's like all of 12 pounds, apparently that's a climate crime, according to our state broadcaster, whom we can't defund fast enough. But I'm going to ask you guys to fund us, and I'll tell you a couple of ways that you can do that. So if you're watching us on Rumble, thank you for supporting a great free speech platform. If you want to get involved in the show, support the work that we do, Rumble Rant is a great way to do it. It's their paid chat over there. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, it's obligatory. We're reading it on air. If it's under that, we'll do our very, very best to get to it. But that is, of course, time permitting. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, they have a paid chat over there. It's called a super chat. Same rules apply, but they also have an extra way that you can support us if you're not able to catch the live version of the show. It's called a super thanks, and that's their paid comment. And we just appreciate you so much for choosing us. There are a lot of other places that you could choose to support, and we know that you have less money left in your pocket than ever before. The government takes more in taxes and leaves you with less. So we appreciate you for supporting us. Now, before we get into the news, because there's a ton, as Tamara alluded to, I just want to invite everybody to our birthday party. So we have actually two birthday parties. We actually missed our very real birthday party in February because it was just too busy. Mark Carney was becoming the leader of the Liberals, and then we were sort of in election mode and all of that. And oh, don't forget the tariffs. So we sort of set aside our birthday, which, as I said, was back in February. And we just kept putting it off. And if you put it off, then you'll just never get around to celebrating it. And it's not really about celebrating our birthday, it's about celebrating all of you who made 10 years possible. And so that's why we want to celebrate with you. We're inviting you to our Rebel birthday party. Calgary, September 18th, Toronto, October 16th. And I'm not a day oneer, but I'm a year oneer. And I think my anniversary at Rebel News is September 15th or 16th. And so this is like right after my 10th anniversary at Rebel News. We want you to be with us. We've got live music, meet and greet, photos with all your favorite Rebels, cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, and there's also like a VIP dinner if you want to get involved in that. And in Calgary, we have a very special musical guest, Tamara Leach, who not only fights for freedom, but can really belt out a tune. And then in Toronto, as I said, it's October 16th. Don't quite have a musical guest pinned down yet, but we'll have something great in store for you. That's October 16th. Just go to happybirthdayrebel.com for more details. And I can't wait to see all of you there.
Yeah, it's always fun when we get to kind of take a load off, relax,
All
get
get
out.
together.
Yes, have everyone together in one space. I mean, technology is amazing for being able to connect us all virtually, but nothing can replace that in-person
Yeah.
gathering. So it's always a great time. Um, and speaking of not so great times, Canada's being called out on its BS, really, by the US ambassador to Canada. who is revealing that the country's actually, well, I shouldn't say the country, but our leadership under the fairly newly minted Prime Minister Mark Carney, they're disavowing and kind of disregarding guardrails that are in place with our trade agreements. They call it CUSMA, but I like to refer to it as the USMCA, the
It's
US,
just easier to
Mexico,
say.
Canada. Yeah, it really is. It flows nicer. So that's the trade agreement that was established, I think, back in 2019.
28.
Um,
Yeah, in and around then. I was
it's
negotiated by Chrystia Freeland of all people. So
Yeah, it's been in place for a few years now. And so this tariff trade war escalation, the US has upheld their part of the USMCA, and Canada not so much. Have a listen to this.
I would maybe add, we've been nicer to Canada at this point than Canada has been to the U.S.
Would you say from what you're seeing, what you're hearing, is there any areas in Canada that have made the current negotiation approach harder to reach a mutually beneficial agreement?
Oh, yeah, I think some of the retaliatory tariffs to the U.S. Are a huge irritant. We have protected the integrity of CUSMA. Okay, our negotiators have said we are not going to implement tariffs on any products that are covered under CUSMA. Canadians have said those guardrails are off. I think since April, they have been tariffing U.S. products that are part of the CUSMA agreement. Okay, the products that are covered under CUSMA are they're going into the U.S. tariff-free, and the ones going north are covered or now have this, I think, 25% tariff on them. Okay, and so what it means is, I know from American companies, they're saying, hey, we're basically going into Canada and we can't sell because we've got a 25% tariff, while our Canadian competitors are coming into the U.S. with no tariffs at all. You put that together with the actions of your provinces, where they're saying, in certain cases, they're saying, all right, we're going to first buy product from our province. If the product from our province is not available, we are going to buy Canadian. If there's not a Canadian product available, we're going to buy international. And if there's not an international product available, then we may finally consider buying American, or maybe not buying at all. Okay, I think, that the Canadians have gone on those issues, they've gone significantly further than where the U.S. has gone. Canada is calling into question the future of CUSMA. It's not the United States of America. It's Canada.
Yeah, it's
um,
a really
I just
interesting kind of take and angle that I haven't heard before. And just wanted to throw to that being from Jasmine Lane, the host of the Over Opinionated podcast. And I think this deserves a bit of a deeper dive,
for
as
sure.
always. But I think Canada has played a key role, and by Canada again, I mean supposed leaders like Mark Carney and the likes of liberal adjacent Premier of Ontario, allegedly progressive conservative Doug Ford,
Mhm.
who has escalated these tensions by their ridiculous rhetoric spewed out in press releases and to the media. Instead of calling up the president and saying, hey, let's work out a deal. When are we meeting? What's going on here? Going straight to the source, they're all playing high school antics like, oh, she said we're going to play telephone here, make sure that this reaches them in some distorted way, instead of getting straight to the point and acting like real leaders and taking that first step to initiate real, fruitful trade discussions and work out the best deal for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, on the show yesterday, we talked about Doug Ford and his like, oh, speaking on behalf of 41 million Canadians, and like Albertans are like, the hell you're speaking for us.
I'm
Uh,
even like, wait, no.
yeah, who appointed him? the trade ambassador to the Americans. And if somebody did, he's not the right man for the job. I just wish in this it had been pointed out. And I think the ambassador sort of prefaced his words there. He said some provinces, because you're not talking about us here in Alberta. We're not doing this. When all the other provinces, including Ontario, were saying that we were traitors for not cutting off oil and gas or stopping trade, or that we were traitors for even doing trade missions to speak directly to the Republican lawmakers on this stuff. We were called traitors, but we have not done this like go internationally instead of dealing with American stuff. We're not doing that here. And this just shows one of those things where you have Albertans saying, once again, our Laurentian elites and their enablers like Doug Ford, they are harming our economy when we're doing everything to the contrary. And I'm sort of glad the ambassador made a distinction there when he said some, or I would even say most provinces, but he didn't name us by name, but we have not been participating in this absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I definitely took note when he mentioned that. And I was like, okay, he is making it very clear that not everyone is on board, as Doug Ford seems to claim
Right.
in front of the podium. He's like, oh, the only thing Trump has done is united Canada and Canadians more than ever before. And I'm like, what kind of out to lunch?
We're trying to leave
world
over here.
Yeah, like where are you even coming from, Doug Ford? Who is advising you? And are you not paying attention to the world?
It's like we don't even exist. Well, it's
Yeah.
like we don't even exist. Like we're actively trying to leave.
Yeah, I'm like, was
like
Danielle Smith not just at your cottage? Like,
right.
Did you have that many drinks that you forgot? Anyway, we have a super chat already here from Kevin Hall, gives $5. Thanks so much, Kevin. Says, can't wait to see you all at the party in the new country. Coming, and so I'm assuming he means Alberta, coming from Hamilton, as the commute to Calgary will be easier than getting to Toronto. Laugh out loud. Yeah, I ever hear that. I hate going into the city now. I mean, it's been festering for a while, but yeah, the commute from Hamilton to Toronto absolutely would be easier to just drive out to Calgary. At least it's smooth sailing and clear roads ahead, but getting into the city, absolute chaos, mayhem. And you never know who's on the road these days because of all the licensing issues and illegalities that are happening, especially with transport trucks, which are a danger in and of themselves. And then you put somebody who has no idea how to drive them, isn't maintaining them, and especially has no idea about the rules of the road in Canada and, you know, in Ontario specifically, on the busiest 401 highway. I think it's the busiest highway in all of North America. Yeah. This is just a recipe for disaster. So completely empathize that it is easier to go from Hamilton to Calgary than it is, 150 kilometers down the road to Toronto. So thanks, Kevin.
I can tell that Kevin's a regular viewer of the show because it has made it into common parlance for myself and Lise that when we see Ontario doing something bad or crazy, we just say in the new country. It's not going to be like that. We won't do those things in our new country. So yes.
And I may be joining the new country. It's becoming more and more appealing as time goes on.
I'd be happy to stamp that passport at immigration.
Please sponsor me and my family. We're coming to the new country. Anyway, back to this trade war nonsense. Just today, Polyev was calling out Carney. And this clip comes from Jasmine Lane. When it comes to dealing with the most economically harmful tariffs at all, not from Trump, but rather from China.
Yeah. CPAC.
People across the country are suffering with this, but here in the prairies, of course, in the last 48 hours, people have had a new problem, and that is that the Chinese government has announced yet another unfair round of tariffs, this time charging a canola seed. They've already gone after oil and meal, and this is, of course, another unfair attack on our Western producers, many of whom were having a fantastic growing season and looking forward to a bumper crop. That crop is now facing tariffs from one of our biggest customers. These tariffs are unfair and unjustified, and we We lament the fact that Mark Carney has been so silent and so weak, failing to stand up for our farmers against these tariffs. Meanwhile, Carney, continues to provide a billion-dollar taxpayer-backed loan for BC ferries to buy Chinese-made vessels.
Good point.
Can you imagine that? The sign of weakness that Carney is sending to the dictatorship in Beijing. You tax and tariff our farmers, and we'll give you $1 billion loan to create jobs in your country. That kind of weakness has led to failure after failure. Remember, Mark Carney promised that he was an international man of mystery who was going to negotiate deals and end tariffs. Well, what's the result been so far? Let's start south of the border. Since Prime Minister Carney took office, the Americans have doubled tariffs on Canada while they signed deals with Europe, Japan, and other countries. They have increased penalties and increased the number of tariffs. Meanwhile, Mark Carney has made concession after concession, removing the digital services tax and counter tariffs while getting absolutely nothing in return. He sent his ministers to Mexico to try and get a bilateral deal with them. The Mexicans send the Liberals packing. Yeah, he's done photo ops in Europe, but he hasn't got any deals, while the Americans have signed a deal to sell $750 billion of their energy products to the Europeans. Not a single dollar of European commitment to buy Canadian energy. It seems like since Prime Minister Carney took office, it has been American tariffs up and Liberal elbows down. We are seeing a back down and a failure. But we take no delight in this because as Carney fails abroad, Canadians pay the price at home.
He's completely right. The canola industry in one day, and it's compounding as the day goes on, took a $1 billion hit. And this is after 100% tariffs on canola. And now this is like a 75% anti-dumping fee, which is just a tariff. It has been a bumper year for canola in spite of this. And as Scott Moe pointed out yesterday, this is like a $47 billion a year industry. It is made in Canada. The seed itself is designed to grow in our climate, in our soil conditions, and to deal with our short growing season. You swath it, then it ripens. It's quite unique. And whatever you think about seed oils, and trust me, I do. I think the same things. The world wants it, and Canada grows it. I think it's our largest agricultural export. 70% of Alberta's canola goes, that's destined for export, goes directly to China. 50% of the country's canola is grown in Saskatchewan. So nobody cares, right? Like nobody cares because this is exclusively happening to the two noisiest Western provinces and to some extent the interior of British Columbia and Manitoba. But this is really an Alberta, Saskatchewan problem. But you would think that given that the canola industry is larger than the steel industry, you might see some announcements, but we won't. And just to preface this, we don't want handouts, Western Canadian farmers. We don't. We just want the reason for the tariffs to end, and that is Mark Carney's tariffs on inbound electric vehicles from China. That's why this is all happening, is to protect those Ontario and Quebec jobs that were already given gajillions of dollars, and nobody wants them.
And nobody wants electric vehicles either.
Right.
So do away with the electric vehicle pipe dream. And
Yeah.
we have another clip here of Polyev saying that same thing today. And he says, this is a longer clip, but I think it's worth playing because embedded in here, he says, for the northern, like the Yukon territories, Northwest territories,
Here.
it would cost upwards of $300 billion with a B dollars to put in electric charging station infrastructure. $300 billion when we have reliable, consistent, quality oil and gas to utilize. It's crazy.
no major projects, such as pipelines, have been proposed, approved, or begun construction. His energy cap, Carney's energy cap, industrial carbon tax, and continued support for banning pipelines, for the laws that ban pipeline, are keeping our resources in the ground and making us more dependent than ever on the Americans. So much for, he said it was going to be build, baby, build. So far it's been block, baby, block. He's not actually getting anything built. He's all talk and no action. Things are not different. They are getting worse. And there's more trouble ahead. Mark Carney's promised to ban your gas truck and car, which a ban that begins phasing in just months from today. It will kill jobs, balloon costs, and grind rural communities to a halt. Farmers, ranchers, resource workers would not be able to do their jobs because EVs don't work over long distances and in cold weather. It would literally erase many small towns from the map. Now, a lot of people will say that is hyperbole, but I asked the farmers here today, could the rural communities across the prairies actually continue to go on if they had to drive exclusively electric vehicles? Could that run on an electric battery? How could you move your grain to markets? How could you do the regular work that's required to have a pickup truck in minus 40-degree weather in February? It is simply not possible. What Mark Carney was doing by banning gas vehicles is he is banning the rural way of life. Communities across Western Canada, rural Ontario, y compris au Quebec, and in the rural Atlantic would be gone. And forget about the northern territories of our country, where this pipe dream would be impossible. There's not even the electrical infrastructure. It would cost $300 billion to put in place the electrical charging stations and transmission networks to actually do that, which would be thousands of dollars of costs in higher taxes and prices for consumers for every single family. And not only would it eliminate rural communities, it would eliminate our auto sector. And don't take my word for it. I want to quote from a letter by automotive manufacturers who said, and I quote, this is a letter to Mr. Carney, to which he has not even responded. There is no longer a pathway to achieving the government's mandated sales level of 20% in 2026.
Hasn't even responded. How's that for your open and transparent government, Canadians?
Yeah, and we're talking about building out electric vehicle infrastructure because of the Liberal government and the NDP colluders here in Alberta and our early phase out of coal, which is crazy. Like, it's coming out of the riverbeds. Like, you just walk down the riverbed, there's coal. Kick the ground, there's coal. That's why we don't have we have open pit mining because it's so close to the surface. But we're not allowed to use it. So we get brownouts. But now we're going to throw in electric vehicles into the grid. And Polyev is right to point out that the 300 horsepower tractor sitting behind him there, that if you go on the Case website right now, they don't even post a price for it, just so you understand how much these things cost. So what, farmers are just supposed to swap over? How are we going to run the power grid when all of a sudden we need to add heavy industry to become electrical also? I don't know if you've maybe Olivia can just Google the size of the mining equipment in Fort McMurray. Like the size of the tires, just massive. And that's going to run efficiently on electricity in Alberta winters? No, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's a pipe dream, and it will devastate our entire economy. It will quite literally grind it to a halt.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine an initiative so good that you have to force everyone into it.
Right.
It's like, yeah, here, look at that. Look at the photo. Is that a little person? If you zoom into that orange vest, is that that's a person, I think, to the, I don't know what, my right. The other side of the screen there, right down at the bottom. See that little guy down there? That's a little guy, isn't it? Or is it a pylon?
There's a cone. There's a cone there. But
I'm looking at a tiny screen.
Even if you just Google people standing next to the mining truck tires,
the massive tires, yeah,
you'll just see it just won't efficiently run on electricity. I mean, you'll get like 3 wheel turns, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention in the dead of winter, you'll get no wheel turns because it won't even work. But it reminds me of the COVID shots too, right? Because it was a treatment so good that you just had to force everyone to get it. It's like electric vehicles are technology so great, we have to mandate you all to drive them and offset the cost with massive government, i.e. taxpayer funded subsidies for things like Northvolt to flop anyway. So what are we doing here, and why is this moving ahead? I think like Carney was supposed to be the economist that saved us all with all of his banker experience. And well, we are, what I think it's 150-ish days into his tenure, and we have nothing to show for it in terms of tangible benefits that are getting Canadians out of this mess that the Liberals have been continually piling us into for the last 10 years. And electric vehicles are certainly one of those things. But
they work in certain, no, I was just going to say electric vehicles, like I'm not particularly against them. I know some of the people who watch us own them, but they might be right for you. But I can promise you they're wrong for me, and I should be allowed to choose something that works for me. It would be like forcing everybody into a small car when you have Ugolini levels of children, right?
Yeah.
They
into
make
the bike
other
lanes.
Right. They make other models because you have to choose what works for you.
Yeah, and speaking of the climate alarmism, which is what the electric vehicle mandate is entirely based off of, notwithstanding the fact that lithium mining is a complete environmental destroyer, and we cannot recycle these batteries, and they leach toxic chemicals into the groundwater.
And
but
when they start on fire, and when they start on fire, we don't know how to deal with them, and it makes firefighters sick and potentially fatally sick to deal with these fumes. But yes, let's build more of these electric battery facilities.
And, you know, that's funny because it sparked my thoughts on the wildfires plaguing our country. I wonder what role electric vehicles may play in something like that. Like, do they become overheated eventually when it becomes so hot and dry? I mean, we've been told that we can't hike in a forest. Well, what about your electric vehicle?
Well,
anyway,
that's a good point, because I think it was the Nissan Leaf. Maybe it was the Volt, Chevy Volt. Someone's going to write me a letter and say it was one or the other. But there used to be a running joke because they used to start on fire so much they ended up on a recall, and people were like, yeah, it comes with a free fire extinguisher. Like, like it was really bad. I think they've sort of fixed that, but now just imagine acres and acres and acres of battery facilities to store your wind electricity.
Nothing to see here, just random spontaneous combustion. Let's hope that
caused by your dog, apparently, if you asked the CBC.
Oh gosh.
They published this with like a straight face, I guess. People often miscalculate the impact of climate choices, like owning a dog, study says. My dog is not a climate choice. My dog was a family choice, not a climate choice. Let me promise you, with utmost confidence, nothing I do, no choice I make, is ever in the interest of combating climate change. Ever, 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 never. I won't do it. Owning a dog, avoiding plane flights, amongst the most important for climate change, were often the most underestimated. Basically saying like, we think that the things we do have more of an impact than they actually do, when giving up ownership of a dog, giving up your flight, has more of an impact than stupid recycling programs, which I don't believe recycling programs are actually effective. Burn your garbage, send it back to Mother Nature, like I do. But yeah, they basically said your dog is a carnivore, and so being a carnivore over here has a terrible impact on the climate, and thus dogs are bad for the environment. But it's like these people have never actually considered that dog food is frequently made with the waste product of like human food. And so dog food is a form of recycling, but don't let facts get in the way of good freakouts for these people.
I can't even believe, given the political landscape that we currently live in, that this is a headline our state broadcaster decided to run. Like, I guess they've moved on from cow farts being a leading cause of climate change.
I think it's all tied together because your dog will eat the byproducts of beef production. And so your dog is part of the dangerous meat eating realm. And so your dog is just as guilty of inducing climate change as somebody like me who enjoys 7 steaks a week.
This is peak gaslighting. They go on in about a third of the way down how the human brain is wired also plays a role, and goes on basically to say that because you can't tangibly see how dogs are contributing to climate change, so therefore you don't think that the risk is real. And it's like, I just can't believe that this is the nonsense we are forced to fund through subsidies and our tax dollars by our state broadcaster.
Can we just go back to that article for a second? Because I noticed something a little bit fun there. So the picture of the dog that they chose,
Yes.
Let's overlook the fact that putting clothes on your dog is kind of consumerist and wasteful, and whatever. But scroll down. That is a dog in China. A woman walks her dog in the Chaoyang district in Beijing. Because dogs eat meat, they contribute more to emissions than pets like rabbits.
Like who?
Okay,
Oh my goodness.
Beijing, the biggest problem with the environment there is the dog and not like the coal electricity plants that have no regard for particulate the way that we do here. That they saw that dog and they were like, there's the dog in China. That's a part of the war on the climate. Let's use that instead. Like 10 feet away is like
We have to just
vehicles with no emission standards and just the coal-fired electricity just barfing particulate onto people.
we have to just zoom in on this dog here. Like, look at this climate criminal. How dare this
With the
dog
booties.
be clad in a dress and little booties and just fueling the burning of the globe with just existing. Just the dog just isn't allowed to exist anymore.
Yep. Get rid of the dogs. Like, who wrote this, PETA? I guess.
I can't.
Makes me want to get another dog.
Seriously, we've been thinking about it, and I'm like, well, we're so busy and we're, always here and there, and can we take care of a dog? But now that the government and the CBC is telling me that we probably shouldn't own a dog, I'm like, maybe we should get 2.
I know. I'm thinking Morgan could use a buddy in an act of resistance.
Yeah, it starts at the home, Sheila. It starts at the home. All right. Should we hit a quick ad break before we come back to more craziness?
Yes, let's do that.
All right.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same rhetoric.
We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us. Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
All right, there is this crazy article that I wrote up this morning. It originally comes from data that was compiled by Le Devoir, which is I believe it's a Montreal-based publication. So you have to translate it if you're not a French speaker or bilingual, which I sadly am not. But Meta was paid nearly $2 million to promote Carney's campaign, despite him literally campaigning on and pledging technological sovereignty for Canada. So the Liberal Party was caught funding Meta, which is a United States-based company, to bolster and boost Carney's campaign. And as I mentioned, this data was compiled by Le Devoir, and it reveals that the Liberal Party of Canada spent $1.8 million during Carney's campaign on Meta ads, which they say culminated in his minority government victory on April the 28th. And peak spending turned out to just be the day before, on April 27th, when they spent $211,000 in change allocated to ads from his account alone. Even after the election, now that he's prime minister, they continue to invest anywhere from $175 to $1,300 daily on Meta ads, including a recent French language survey launched as recently as this past Sunday. So there's some quotes from some critics and a former director of French news services, Alain Saulnier. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and I'm so sorry if I'm not, because my pronunciation of the French language is terrible. But he points out that this the true digital sovereignty would require independence, obviously, from US-based tech giants like Meta. And then he questioned, Carney's commitments to regulating these spaces, especially as which I don't necessarily disagree with, but he withdrew that digital sales tax after Trump threatened to cease trade negotiations. I think that was just last month. But he also, questioned the ethics of all of this, and states that, I'm just trying to find, that it's an ethical problem because Carney campaigned literally on giving Canadians digital sovereignty while he is simultaneously funding big tech in the US to promote and advertise his campaign. And he also holds shares in Meta platforms, as was detailed in his scathing 16-page ethics report, and according to the Office of Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner. So the other thing that I just want to point out here, and I kind of threw it in at the end of the article, but I think it's worth more of a headline in and of itself, is that Carney has now been in his position as prime minister for 150 days. And in those 150 days, I went back to the Parliament's sitting calendar. And so Parliament's actually only been sitting out of those 150 days for 20 days. So Carney, like our whole political space is such a mess. And it makes me question whether or not we even have a democracy, a functioning democracy, or if it's just, like a smoke and mirrors. This is a democracy on its face. But we have a prime minister who's been serving in that tenure and being paid in that tenure for 150 days and only sitting in Parliament for 20 of them. That is scathing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Asked Olivia to bring up something on this topic. But just while we're on Carney, because Lisa and I have a rule that if Carney is making a policy announcement, or if somebody in a federal agency is doing something, always ask yourself, how does it link back to Brookfield? So I want to talk about Canada Blood Services. And I know it wasn't on the list, but just as you were talking, I'm like, we must talk about this. Olivia, you'll find it on my X account, the letter from the MP, which published it, and Ezra actually made a comment on it. But I do think it's interesting that Mark Carney is choosing to advertise with Meta, because what that does is ensure the people only see on Meta what he wants them to see about him, because he's blocked news on Meta, or at
Right,
least
I
Meta
forgot.
blocked news in response to Mark Carney and his shakedown, because for some ungodly reason, he wanted Meta to pay. Yeah, we'll get to this in a second. He wanted Meta to pay for users sharing links to news platforms, which is actually a free service, which broadens the reach of the news, which actually makes those news companies better able to sell ad dollars, but don't let socialists understand how business works. But because Meta has chosen to not pay the shakedown and thus block Canadian news to avoid paying the shakedown, that means that for all of Mark Carney's advertising, people only see one side of Mark Carney on Meta, which I think is particularly sinister.
Yeah, and that's a great point that I did mention in the article and forgot to mention here. But yeah, the company has opted to block Canadian news for the better part of 2 years in response to the regulatory implications by this same Liberal government. And yet the same Liberal government is funding ads on their platform. The ethics concerns, and I would say glaring infractions, are major here. But, you know, we live in Canada where you can just say sorry and then move on to the next ethics implication in a few months or in a few weeks.
I'm glad you brought up ethics implications, because it ties into this next story. And I know it's not in the headline. I know I'm springing it on everybody. I know I should have put it on the list of topics to talk about, but I completely forgot. And I think this is wild. So, for people outside of Canada or who don't know, there are 2 ways that you can give blood in Canada. By donation altruistically, you do that through Canada Blood Services, or through, I don't know if you can do this in other provinces, but in Alberta, there's a foreign company named Grifols that you can sell your blood plasma to. Okay, I'm not, whatever. There are, I think, moral and ethical implications with parting out people like their old Camaros. However, it's legal to do that. And so people can just donate their blood. Okay, if you want to do it that way, or you can do it through Grifols, and Grifols will pay you for your blood donations. Now, this is what the Conservatives have uncovered. If you have been giving your blood to Canada Blood Services for free, they have in turn been selling your blood plasma for a profit to Grifols. So you've been donating your blood thinking, oh, I don't want to sell my blood, I want to give it. Maybe you're somebody like me and you're like, I am religiously and morally opposed to selling your body. So I'll give it to Canada Blood Services. Well, Canada Blood Services has been selling your blood behind your back to Grifols. So you may as well have been just selling it yourself to Grifols. So they uncovered this. Spanish drug maker Grifols is selling products made with plasma obtained from Canada Blood donations, despite Canada Blood Services promising that nothing can be sold or would be sold offshore. We've now uncovered that Brookfield Asset Management has been aggressively trying to buy Grifols over the last year. This is hideous. Carney is personally invested in Brookfield and could personally profit if a takeover goes through. Canadians' blood donations should save lives here, not line the pockets of foreign corporations or the Prime Minister. Conservatives are demanding the Health Committee launch an immediate investigation. This is insane. That's all.
And will there be an investigation? I mean,
who's going to investigate? The Health Minister? The Liberal
themselves.
Health Minister? Yeah.
Yeah. We investigated ourselves and we found that it was all fine. So moving
we
right
found ourselves innocent. Who knew? Yeah. You know, this is just another, and don't tell me Mark Carney didn't know that Brookfield Asset Management was trying to buy Spanish drug maker Grifols, who buys blood from Canadians or blood products from Canadians. And I'm just so shocked, actually, that Canada Blood Services was collecting your blood and then just selling it. It's crazy. What a violation. Just gross. It just feels so gross if you've given blood thinking that it's going to, because, well, like if you're like me and you're just like, I'm not selling a part of my body, I'm giving of it freely to help another, and then finding out that they're profiting off you. Yuck. Ugh.
It's sad that I've become so desensitized to the ethics violations happening in this country that it's not at all surprising. It's disgusting, but it's not at all surprising. And here we are. We have another super chat from PSCO Field 10, gives $5. Thank you. Don't worry too much about the impact of Doug Ford south of the 49th parallel. Rest assured that he is accorded the same American respect as Chrystia Freeland.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And he'll be posting up in photo ops with Chrystia Freeland and just be pretending like he's living his best life.
His friend Krista, he calls her.
Oh, gosh.
Yuck.
I think he has a daughter named Krista.
Yeah, Krista,
But anyway.
properly spelled, not Christia, because she has to be special.
All right, we should probably hit the rest of our headliners here.
Yeah.
Which ones? We haven't touched on yet. The Ottawa spending $170,000 on ISIS brides. I'm just trying to find the link here to pull that one up.
Yeah, and why are we flying them back home? You left to join ISIS. You left to willingly join a terrorist organization once you were fully aware that they were starting a caliphate and enslaving Christians and Yazidis and selling them in slave markets, beheading them, forcibly converting them or beheading them, destroying their Christian towns, their churches, and Christian history, really, because the Nineveh Plain is really the birth of Christianity in northern Iraq, and ISIS went about destroying it. If you joined ISIS once you saw that happening, you're not our problem anymore. You're theirs. And you get to stay gone. This is one of those times that even if you're Canadian born, you've just renounced your citizenship. If you leave to engage in terrorism or give care and comfort to terrorists by carrying their children for them, you don't get to come back. But apparently we brought them back and then let them splurge on room service, and they're drinking wine. I thought they were such Orthodox Muslims that they had to start a caliphate and then they're drinking wine.
Yeah. Well, this story comes from Global News, and yeah, it explains wine, candy, and room service. How Ottawa spent, and by Ottawa, obviously they mean the Canadian taxpayer, spent $170,000 on Canadian ISIS women. So federal officials spent at least $170,000 bringing Canadian ISIS women home from Syria.
8 women, 8 of them.
Wow. This is according to, they must have filed access to information documents that show expenses for ice cream, candy, and wine.
Business class flights. Okay, when I schlepped off to northern Iraq to document what these women were supportive of, I slept in airports, crammed into my economy seat. But the women who are part and parcel of perpetrating that genocide, the taxpayer flew them home on business class flights. They got to stay at the Montreal Marriott. Sick.
Yeah, the money for the cost was for, as you said, 8 women who had traveled to the Middle East to join the Islamic State, then returned to Canada with their children in 2022 and 2023. Global Affairs.
I would repatriate the children, but the ladies can stay there.
Yeah, I mean, you made a conscious choice there to go back, and Global Affairs Canada paid for business class flights, stays at the Montreal Airport Marriott, room service, chips, chocolate bars, and Timbits. One hotel room cost over $1,000 for 2 nights because of a $95 wine tab. I would say that's even an astronomical charge, just $1,000 for 2 nights. But another ran to $850 with charges for junk food and a $25 servings of red, white, and sparkling wines. Just living that high life. $2,800 for catering, $24 sandwiches at the hotel's restaurant bar, and $86 worth of snack food and over-the-counter drugs at a hotel gift shop. Yeah, I guess you would need Tylenol after all the refined sugar and wine.
Yeah, it should be diabetic medication, insulin, $95 in wine for that one room.
This is gross.
Yeah.
Caramel bars, Aero bars, Doritos. $100 for books, clothing, travel bags, Canadian pins, and a high value token of appreciation purchased at Best Buy. Like, oh man, we really need a Doge North.
This is crazy. Everybody involved should be fired.
Yes.
Everybody.
100%.
And remember,
ordered to repay all the costs.
This government had to be forced to recognize the ISIS genocide. They actually had to be shamed by a Yazidi survivor of the sex slavery committed against Yazidi women in northern Iraq and Syria. She had to come to the parliament to shame the liberals in it, Nadia Murad. And this is what they were doing to the people who were quite potentially participating in her torture.
Well, further down, it says that this actually doesn't even include the cost of sending Canadian officials, so I would say the military, to extract the women from Syria.
No, you're the serious problem. You're not. Oh my God.
The response was that the Department of the Global Affairs Canada is withholding 50 pages of these documents because they're under consultation with a foreign government. So they had to coordinate. I don't want to say collude, but they had to coordinate efforts with a foreign government.
I bet you this is the United Nations, if I had to guess. They've got such a heavy footprint there. And it's actually to the detriment of the real people who need to get out of that region. So let's also recall, by the way, it appears as though they're moving heaven and earth to get the ISIS brides out. But if you were a Christian in the Middle East, particularly survivors of the ISIS genocide who were trying to leave and get to Canada, under Stephen Harper, he made persecuted Christians coming from genocide zones a priority in the immigration queue, in the refugee queue. If you were going to die because you were a Christian, you got to jump in front of everybody else. I agree. But Justin Trudeau changed that. He said, no, that's I think he called it disgusting to allow persecuted Christians. Like, the genocide was perpetuated against them. They even smashed the cemeteries because even the Christian dead couldn't rest in peace. Justin Trudeau said that's disgusting and he changed it. But it's even worse on the ground, because what happens is the United Nations, which is already anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, they hire the locals who have many times perpetuated the genocide and now are just pretending they didn't. We were against that. They hire them to work in the refugee camps. And if you have a Christian last name, or if you have a Yazidi last name, well, guess what? Your paperwork keeps getting shuffled down to the bottom and you never get out of the refugee camp. In fact, I went with some aid workers who were working with the Nazarene Fund to deliver aid and diapers to the refugee camps that are run by the United Nations, to the Christians and the Yazidis, because they can't get aid inside the refugee camps. That's how bad it is there. And yet those people shoved to the back of the line while Global Affairs moves heaven and earth to wine and dine ISIS brides and put them in business class to get them over here. It's revolting. I feel like I have a video in me about this.
Yeah, I was going to say, take that and turn it into a video.
Yeah, you've been listening to Ezra.
Left in our headliners, let's hit this. What's happening in Nova Scotia and the eastern provinces, which are these wildfires. And so not necessarily the wildfires, but the response to the wildfires, which is to ban people, as we mentioned a bit earlier, from hiking, walking in the forest, going on a, good old fashioned family picnic, for instance. Well, that now comes with a severe risk of spontaneous combustion, and you are banned from doing so, and threatened with COVID era style fines that are actually more aggressive, though. They're $25,000 worth of fines for violating the woods ban. And then you have a local MP here in Nova Scotia saying that this actually is not high enough. This comes from the Hill Times, where MP Jessica Fancy Landry says the ban on entering forests is not about politics or control. Of course it's not, but about safety. So it's for your health.
Always,
it's for your
always,
safety.
always.
And if you violate it, 25 grand, it's not enough, she says.
Do you know what? Why are these MPs not asking for higher fines on violating the fire ban or the ATV ban?
Yes.
And, I saw people commenting saying, well, Newfoundland and Labrador, they banned ATVs, so that's overreach. Look, I almost burned down an entire forest with an ATV during fire season. They are not intrinsically safe to be out in the forest during fire season. Muskeg can fall off a tailpipe, and then it's like, if you're the last ATV in the line, if you don't look back, you'll burn down everything. So I get that, but like shoes, hiking, fishing, okay. Newfoundland and Labrador seems to be the only province that is going out of its way to balance things. They've upped the fines for violating the fire ban, but have opted not to ban people from the forest. So they've said no forest fires, no, no ATVs, but we can't kick you out of the forest. Exactly. So they've made the fine for violating the fire ban, I think it's $150,000. Yes, that makes sense. But Jessica Fancy Landry, whose name doesn't sound real, by the way, that sounds like me making fun of you, Jessica Fancy Landry. She's missing the point. You shouldn't be fining people for being in the forest. You should be fining them for doing actually dangerous things, which is having a fire or doing things that might lead to a fire, but things that might lead to a fire aren't walking. They're missing the point. If Newfoundland and Labrador, which is under the same fire threat, is able to balance rights with public safety by upping the consequences for violating the fire ban, why isn't that approach being taken in other provinces, except that it is truly about control and not safety?
Well, and once again, why do Canadians have to suffer for government ineptitude?
Right.
I don't know if you played the clip on the live stream yesterday, but Conservative MP Rempel Garner called out the federal government and their supposed wildfire prevention and response efforts that were promised 4 years ago to fund more water bombers, more firefighters, and cleaning up all of the dead brush that poses a great fire hazard risk when it's just left, as we saw with the Jasper town site being destroyed by wildfire because there wasn't those checks and balances put in place to clean up the dead brush. I mean, this is the same thing happening again a whole year later. And what have we learned? Well, we need to lock everybody down and prevent them from walking in the forest because the government can't do what it's supposed to be and mandated to do and funded through our tax dollars to do. And all regular Canadians have to suffer the consequences of that. And if you try to fight the government or say this makes no sense, you get slapped with these insane fines. And then it's just like a circle loop of reinforcement where government says, well, we are justified in this and you have to pay that. And so every way you look at it, the average person pays and pays and pays, and the government just gets off scot-free.
Oh, well, and the average person is punished for the government not actually doing its job. Because it's the government that has created the scarcity, as I talked about yesterday on the show. It's just like with COVID, but with this, government has created scarcity of firefighting resources. And instead of dealing with that over the past 4 years, their response is to punish the people who are victims of the scarcity, us. The people who want to be in the forest. And it's the same thing with healthcare. During COVID, they create the scarcity in the healthcare system. Healthcare system is broken and unusable. Wait times are out of control. There aren't enough frontline workers and too many managers, and our hospitals are overburdened. And then COVID comes along and they say, well, now we have this scarcity. So you, the victims of the scarcity, have to pay the price for it by not being able to do anything or see people or leave your homes, buy your groceries in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And it's all of the COVID nonsense paved the way for these climate lockdowns and restrictions. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at.
Yep.
All right. I think we hit all of the headliners.
Yeah, we did. And I'm wondering, do you have any more chats? Okay.
All
So,
right.
all right, that's it. This is we didn't get to all the things we wanted to talk about, but we talked about everything that was on the headline, plus one thing that I threw at everybody extra, of course, Mark Carney being a vampire with griffles.
Basically, we'll just summarize it down into that.
Yeah. Yeah, Lisa's
right.
always giving him a hard time about his incisors, and then like yesterday, she's like, "Did you see the griffle stuff? Maybe he is a vampire."
You heard it
Maybe he
here
is.
first, folks. All right.
Yes.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. And there will be a panel and discussion, same time and place tomorrow from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. And thanks everybody on the back end who makes sure that all the links are accessible and everything is easy to access for our viewers. And of course, thanks to our viewers for supporting us and pitching in a little bit on the live stream. Have your voices heard on a broader platform. Always much appreciated. And until tomorrow, stay sane and question everything.
Crime rages in our streets as catch and release laws still release the most dangerous monsters to terrorize our communities. Carney has kept Justin Trudeau's out-of-control immigration numbers. Worse, the Liberal government has lost track of 600 foreign criminals with records of committing crime in Canada who should have been deported but are now wandering our streets, God knows where, doing God knows what. Low-wage temporary foreign workers take jobs and drive wages down for our